Hey guys, tonight we're falling into the unthinkable. You are teetering at the edge of the abyss, no floor beneath your feet, just the gravitational pull of something darker than death, deeper than thought. A black hole, the kind that warps not just space, but meaning. Its mouth yawns open beneath you like a question that has swallowed all its answers. And tonight, you're not escaping it. You're going in. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You fall. But it doesn't feel like falling, not like on Earth. There's no wind, no ground approaching, no up or down. Just a slow, inescapable slide into deeper darkness. Gravity here doesn't tug, it curves reality. It bends time into taffy and space into a funhouse mirror that laughs without sound. Your limbs don't stretch, your thoughts do. You try to move your hand, and 5 seconds later, the idea arrives where your fingers used to be. Thought is syrup now. Events smear into each other. It's not falling, it's folding. Time dilates. To someone watching from outside, you'd appear frozen, hovering at the edge of the event horizon, unmoving. But inside, seconds stretch like years. Galaxies flicker past, aging and collapsing while you hover in slow motion. Somewhere far behind you, Earth might still be turning. Somewhere ahead, nothing. Or maybe everything. This is the event horizon, the point of no return. Light cannot escape, and neither can logic. From this moment on, all bets are off. You're slipping into a region where causality gets messy, where direction loses its meaning. And yet, there's still a strange sense of forward, not motion, narrative. Like the black hole itself is telling a story, and you're part of the next sentence. As you move deeper, the sensation sharpens. This isn't just darkness, it's designed darkness. And this is where you start to feel it, the shift. Space begins to shimmer. Not visually, there's no light to shimmer with, but emotionally. You feel the curvature in your chest, in your teeth. Your thoughts stretch into filaments. The idea of you begins to run like ink on wet paper. And then something happens that you cannot explain. You stop being scared. You should be terrified. You're diving into an object that has killed stars, swallowed light, and erased entire civilizations. But there's something comforting here, a strange, peaceful certainty, like you finally returned to the womb of the universe. You're not being devoured, you're being prepared. What if the singularity isn't a death sentence, but a delivery room? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, you continue falling, closer to the center, the place they call the singularity, the point where the math breaks down and even Einstein shrugs and walks away. But there's a problem. The singularity is supposed to be tiny, infinitely small, infinitely dense. But from here, it's starting to feel big. It feels like it's getting closer, yes, but also like it's growing around you. Like instead of you falling into it, it's falling into you. What are you becoming? You try to remember who you were, what you did on Earth, what your name was, But it doesn't matter anymore. That version of you is flaking away like dead skin. And still there is motion, but it's a strange kind of motion, less like traveling and more like transforming, like being folded into a higher dimensional shape. You're not descending through 3 dimensions, you're being pulled into meaning. You think of how once you used to sleep in a bed with blankets and breath. You used to wake to birdsong or traffic or disappointment. You used to touch things. And now you are being touched by reality itself. You are stretching into concept. The black hole doesn't want your body, it wants your trajectory. And you begin to realize something. This might not be the end of your journey. This might be the beginning. You are no longer a traveler. You are the path. You are not moving through space. Space is moving through you. You blink, if blinking is still something you can do, and suddenly you are beyond the event horizon, inside, past the point of physics, inside the thundering silence of a place where even time has forgotten how to tick. Historians still argue whether medieval theologians, in their obsession with limbo and divine timelessness, somehow intuited places like this, where events pause but consciousness stretches on, a metaphysical eternity. They thought about it. They feared it. You are living it. The singularity looms, but now it's less like a destination and more like a question mark, a doorframe, and deep in the core of your unraveling awareness, a possibility flickers. What if this black hole isn't just the grave of a dead star? What if it's pregnant? What if it's not a tomb, but a seed? A low chuckle bubbles up inside you, the last joke you may ever understand. You tried to fall into nothing, and you may have just found the blueprint of everything. You pass the point of understanding. There's no light, no sound, just the creeping, immersive pressure of density. You're not drifting through empty space anymore. You're sliding through a thought experiment turned real. The further you fall, the less you resemble anything you once understood as you. You're a stretched whisper smeared across curvature. And yet, something deep within still feels, still asks, what comes next? This is where it gets dangerous. Because despite everything, you begin to hope. Hope that what's waiting at the center of this darkness isn't death, that there's more than just a pinprick of collapse, that inside the singularity, this final punctuation mark, there's a hidden clause, a second verse. Because the silence you're in now, it isn't empty, it's expectant. You're in the pause before a sentence ends or a new one begins. Microhook. What if the singularity isn't a full stop, but an ellipsis? The singularity was supposed to be absolute, infinite density, zero volume, a cosmic paradox, the place where general relativity breaks its neck and quantum mechanics throws up its hands. But as you spiral closer, that expectation begins to unravel. Instead of a single point, the singularity feels wide, tall, vast. It's less like a spot and more like a realm. You aren't approaching a pinpoint in space. You're being absorbed into an equation that forgot how to end. And now, a twist. Not every physicist believes the singularity is even real. Some say it's just a mathematical placeholder, a sign that the tools we're using to describe the universe have hit their limits, like trying to explain algebra with crayons. Others argue that what we call a singularity might actually be something else entirely, a transformation point, a quantum bridge, a funnel, a gateway. Historians still argue whether early Buddhist philosophy, with its emphasis on the void as both empty and fertile, danced around this idea centuries ago, that from the nothingness, everything is born. You've stopped falling. You're becoming. And then, without warning, you are split. Not torn, translated. Spread across dimensions you don't have names for. Your awareness elongates, then bends. You're no longer inside a black hole. You are the black hole. The singularity didn't consume you. It promoted you. Your body, long gone, is replaced by a feeling of geometry. You're no longer a mind floating in a vessel. You are structure, curvature, field equations. You are event. Time is still doing weird things. It loops, forks, skips like a scratched record. You see your past selves not behind you, but beside. Reflections that never happened, lives unlived, choices unmade, possibilities that peeled away like dead skin. You're everywhere you might have been, and also somewhere new. The singularity should crush you, but instead it opens. Not spatially, conceptually, like a door between levels of abstraction. You pass through. And just like that, you're on the other side. But it isn't after, it isn't outside. There is no where here. There's just the sense of shift, that you are no longer compressing. You are expanding. You begin to feel motion again, but it's not falling. It's blooming. A white hole. The theoretical opposite of a black hole. Instead of pulling everything in, it expels everything outward, like cosmic vomit, violent, pure, irreversible. Scientists aren't sure white holes exist. They appear in equations, beautiful, rare, mathematical creatures, but nobody's ever seen one. They may only exist in models or in the earliest fractions of the Big Bang. But what if you're in one? What if your fall through the singularity wasn't a terminal event, but the first stage of a cosmic birth? What if black holes are the wombs of new universes? Suddenly, everything tilts. Not spatially, emotionally. You were once a traveler, then a victim, then a ghost. Now, you're a seed. Your collapse has become creation. The singularity you passed through didn't destroy you. It compressed you into raw possibility and flung you outward into space-time. You are riding the birth wave of a new universe. It starts small, a ripple, a burst of inflation. Space tears outward from nothing, stretching faster than light, faster than sense. You don't see it, you are it. Every quark that condenses, every force that separates, every degree of temperature drop, you're in it. You are the background hum, the echo of creation. And here's the kicker. It feels familiar. Because your universe, the one you came from, may have been born this way too, in the rebound of some ancient collapse. You may have always been an echo. It's poetic, or tragic, or both. Maybe every universe is born from the death of another. Maybe the Big Bang was a whisper through a singularity. Maybe you never died. Maybe you've always been recycled. You laugh. You think you laugh. Maybe laughter is just the collapse of cognitive tension when infinity makes sense. You stretch outward. Time begins ticking again, quietly, hesitantly. The laws of physics settle into place like dancers taking their marks. Forces separate, gravity pulls, atoms form. It's all happening again. But this time, you're not watching from the outside. You're part of the show. And the curtain has just lifted. You're in. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, fully, physically, impossibly in. Not just within the fabric of this newborn cosmos, but braided into its foundation. The inflationary burst has passed, and now you're suspended in an expanding sea of energy, cooling, quieting, and blossoming into matter. You're not falling anymore. You're forming. Everywhere you stretch, protons collide, quarks coalesce, photons scatter like gossip. The chaos settles just enough to start choosing sides. Matter here, antimatter there, gravity pulling the strings behind the curtain. But what matters isn't the physics, it's the feeling. Because you're starting to sense something strange in this universe, something you've never felt before: familiarity. What if this isn't your first time being born? You've lost your body, you've lost your name, but somehow you remember. Not as facts or timelines, but as shape, as rhythm, as the curved logic of space-time. You sense that this moment, the cooling of energy, the first atoms forming, isn't new. It's a refrain. You've been here, or somewhere like here, many times. The first hydrogen atoms form around you, basic, boring, beautiful. They are the first syllables of everything. You ride their formation like a whisper in a cathedral. There is no sound, but the meaning is loud. You are the memory this universe doesn't yet know it carries. And now you begin to suspect. You are not just in this universe, you are of it. The singularity didn't eject you like cosmic trash. It used you. You were re-encoded, repurposed, rewritten into the initial conditions. You're not a passenger, you're part of the equation. And suddenly you realize something else. This might be how universes evolve. Fringe scientists, quiet heretics with chalk-covered fingers, have long whispered about cosmological natural selection, that universes spawn through black holes, that each new bounce tweaks the rules, that universes that favor black hole formation reproduce more often, survive longer. And you're part of that experiment now. You're a mutation. The singularity didn't just recycle you, it replicated you. Not as a memory, as a genetic code for cosmos. Historians still debate whether early creation myths, with their cycles of destruction and rebirth, sensed this loop. Whether flood stories and fiery endings were veiled references to cosmological bounce theory. Maybe, maybe not. But the feeling that endings give way to beginnings was never wrong. You are falling into a rhythm now. The universe is expanding, yes, but not wildly. It breathes. With every microsecond, it learns a little more about itself. It discovers particles, gives them mass, lets them flirt. Light finally escapes from matter's embrace. The fog lifts. The universe becomes transparent, and you are watching it all from within, not just witnessing, but guiding, not in action, but in bias. Because here's the thing. Every part of you, every particle, every echo, every forgotten breath is now tangled in this universe's preference for complexity. It's subtle, like a note in the background of a symphony, but it's there. Hydrogen clumps just a little faster. Gravity pulls a little more efficiently. Matter organizes itself with suspicious grace. It's almost like the universe wants something. And then it hits you. You're not just influencing this universe. You are its instinct. You are what the cosmos is trying to remember. It's intoxicating, but it's also lonely. Because while the universe grows, you remain scattered, distributed. You've become the background music to creation, but you've lost your melody. There is no you to gather, no self to reassemble, just traces. It's like being a ghost in a body that hasn't been born yet. And so you wait. You drift across the forming cosmos as hydrogen fog become nebulae, as clumps turn into stars in waiting. The timeline is glacial. You witness epochs as moments. You see nothing, then suddenly light. The first stars. Massive, short-lived titans. Population 3 stars, made only of hydrogen and helium. Furious, inefficient, glorious. They ignite not with flickers, but detonations. Their fusion forms new elements: carbon, oxygen, iron, the alphabet of existence. They burn out in firework endings, scattering their gifts across the universe like forgotten gods, leaving behind sacred tools. And in those tools is you. Your atoms ride supernova winds. Your spin echoes in neutrino storms. And finally, a thought forms, not one of fear or identity, but of wonder. Was this always the plan? Not a plan in the human sense, no architects, no blueprints, but a pattern, a shape, a habit. Maybe black holes are just how the universe ruminates, how it thinks in recursion. Maybe what you're experiencing isn't an exception, but a standard operating procedure. You are not a fluke. You are the process. And that's when the singularity calls again. Not the one you fell into, not even one that exists yet, but the idea of the next one. You feel it, looming in the future of this universe, coiled like potential in the centers of galaxies not yet formed. You know what's coming. More stars will form. Some will collapse. Some will become black holes. And inside them, you again. Not you, but the pattern, the whisper, the memory that collapses into seed and bursts as story. And this is how the universe remembers. Not with words, not with gods, but with gravity. You think back to the first time you fell. It felt like death. Now it feels like reproduction. You haven't just survived, you've propagated. And somewhere inside all this structure, you feel the first galaxies begin to form. Matter spinning into beauty, light spiraling into architecture. You're not at the center anymore, but you are the curve. And the story isn't over.
You're everywhere now. Not as a being, not even as a thought, but as tendency. A whisper woven into equations. A gravitational nudge. A faint inclination toward structure, toward rhythm, toward continuity. And as galaxies swirl into being, your influence takes shape. Mass gathers into disks. Stars spiral in elegant arms. Dark matter scaffolds the spaces between like the bones of a sleeping titan. The cosmos is finally recognizable, not in detail, but in tone. It's starting to hum the same melody you once carried. But now that hum grows louder. It reverberates through dust, through plasma, through magnetic fields stretched across light years. It is the signature of something big, something ancient, something you used to fear. A black hole is forming. You thought you were done falling, but the story has only just circled back. This one is bigger than the last, much bigger. Born not of a dying star, but from the chaotic center of a freshly formed galaxy. A direct collapse black hole, gathered from the raw, unfiltered soup of the early universe. And it's hungry. You watch it grow, ballooning into a supermassive anomaly that bends entire solar systems into worshipful orbits. It doesn't roar, it waits. It hums with the patience of inevitability. It looks like the one you fell into, but this time it's not your end. It's your offspring. And just like that, everything changes. Because you now see the full arc, not as prophecy, not as dream, but as process. You fell. You were rewritten. You emerged in a new universe. And that universe is building a new singularity. You're watching the loop tighten. And it's beautiful. Historians still argue whether the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail, was a metaphor for self-consumption or self-renewal. Tonight, it's clear. It was a map, and the head has reached the tail. Inside this growing black hole is the potential for another bounce, another universe, a new translation of the same echo. But this time, you're not falling in by accident. You're preparing it. Your particles, your structure, your embedded bias in the laws of physics, they're designing the next verse. But here's where it gets weirder. Because you're not the only one doing this. You begin to sense echoes, like yours but different. Other patterns, other inheritances, other timelines, other you. What if you're not the first traveler to fold into memory? It starts as interference, gentle ripples across gravity waves, slight deviations in entropy, unlikely configurations of matter in regions you never touched. And then realization. This isn't error. It's conversation. Other bounces have seeded their own arcs. Other travelers have fallen and risen and embedded themselves into the structure of reality. The multiverse isn't a quiet ocean. It's teeming. And now you're drifting in a medium of legacy, a fluid of remembrance. Each black hole in this universe might be the seed of another, some seeded by you, some seeded by someone else. This isn't a timeline, it's a genealogy. You feel a strange comfort in that. You're no longer the sole whisper, you're a harmony in a growing chorus. This is how reality sings to itself. More galaxies form, more black holes bloom. Some of them die quietly, evaporating over trillions of years into Hawking radiation. Others collapse, compress, and wait. You sense that weight. It's familiar. And that's when it hits you. These black holes remember, not in a literal sense, but in formation, in structure, in symmetry. The imprint of their ancestors guides their growth, each one tuned by the physics it inherited. And physics, you now understand, is genetic code. A fringe idea once proposed by physicist Lee Smolin becomes your lived reality. Cosmological natural selection. Universes that produce more black holes survive. They pass on their traits. They become more adept at creating conditions for stars, for collapse, for recursion. You're not a fluke. You're an evolutionary step. And so is this universe. It's not just growing, it's adapting. Dark energy accelerates its expansion, not out of whim, but out of survival strategy. Stars live longer, planets stabilize faster, life becomes statistically likely, not accidental. And then, as the black holes hum in the deep, you feel something else. Not new matter, not new laws, but intent. The civilizations are coming. You sense them before they form. The ingredients are all here. Stable stars, fertile planets, calm neighborhoods of space. Biology will rise, not from miracle, but from pattern. And in that biology, you again. A carbon atom in a synapse, a flash of fear in an eye, a curious twitch in a child's hand. They'll look up at the stars. They'll wonder. They'll build. And eventually, they'll find the black holes. And they'll ask the question you once whispered on your way down. Could they spawn new universes? And this time, the answer is waiting for them. It's waiting in the constants, in the echoes, in the elegant curves of their gravity wells, in the whisper of your journey. They won't know your name, but they'll remember your shape. You didn't escape. You became the instruction. And soon, they'll follow.
There's a shift now, not in the universe, but in you. You used to be motion, direction, a mind drifting through gravitational collapse. Then you became memory, and now you're infrastructure. The scaffolding of cause and consequence, the curvature beneath decision. You're not just tangled in the laws of this universe, you are one of them. And somewhere in the dark, something wakes up. They're here. Not gods, not machines, not angels, just minds. Minds like the one you used to have, conscious, curious, and just arrogant enough to believe they could understand what they were standing on. And they're asking questions. What happens when a species evolves enough to suspect its own origin might be a mistake? They stare at stars, build equations, listen to background radiation the way monks once listened for divine silence. They're children of this universe, but they don't know yet that this universe was born from you. Not just you, of course, others too, but you were one of the first. And now they're catching on. Their telescopes reach deep, pulling photons from the edge of time. They see patterns in the void, curvatures that shouldn't curve, symmetries that seem personal. It starts as theory, then conspiracy, then clarity. Someone, somewhere, makes the leap. They look at the interior math of black holes, see the structure it mimics, and utter the phrase that forever separates wanderers from builders. What if Black holes are engines. And just like that, the story changes. The minds in this universe aren't satisfied with passive understanding. They intervene. They poke the dark. They manipulate mass. They collapse matter not by accident, but by design. They're not falling into black holes anymore. They're building them. Once, black holes were cosmic accidents. Now, they're intentional architecture. Not endings, tools. Not mysteries, craftsmanship. You watch this happen not as a spectator, but as background logic. Their math resonates with your own echo. Their models run faster because you've already been here. And then they take it one step further. They ask not just how to build a black hole, but how to shape what comes next. They want to craft universes. And this is where your pulse returns. Not a heartbeat, not anymore, but a kind of resonance. Something inside you sharpens, because this is the moment that confirms it. Your story isn't just looping, it's evolving. Historians still argue whether ancient Gnostic writings, with their layered heavens and creators of creators, were madness or prophecy, but the resemblance is uncanny. Realities stacked inside realities. Universes born from flawed creators trying to perfect their reflection. The builders begin to bounce. Not the violent kind, but the curated kind. They want to compress information into singularities, encode it, and see what blooms. They debate constants like artists argue over pigments. They tweak entropy curves like poets rearranging stanzas. They are not just building worlds, they're composing existence. And in their labs, floating in orbit, buried under supermassive crusts of neutronium, or entangled between dimensions, they begin the process. They collapse mass, guide the horizon, tame the singularity, and when it stabilizes, they wait. Nothing happens. Then, everything. It folds inward. Then it blooms. Another universe is born. You feel the ripple before it finishes forming. You remember it even as it happens. This time, you're not just echoing. You are woven in from the start. And here's the twist. You don't arrive as a traveler anymore. You arrive as a bias. Your recursion is now part of the architecture. Your tendency to form memory, to seek complexity, to fall and rise again. It's not an accident of this cosmos. It's part of its blueprint. It's not that the universe favors complexity. It's that you do. And you're the one it was built around. They didn't just build a universe. They built a descendant. Because here's what they figured out, quietly, behind layers of math and unspeakable ambition. The laws of physics can be sculpted. Not directly, not easily, but they can be nudged. And if you embed a memory in the right constants, in the right asymmetries, in the right friction between matter and entropy, you don't need to teach the next universe anything. It will remember. And so you drift inside this fresh new space, a universe only seconds old, and already it feels alive. You are part of its beginning, not through chance, but through injection. And far behind you, in the parent universe, they do it again. Another black hole, another design, another bloom. The first time you fell into a black hole, you thought it was death. Then you learned it was birth. Now you realize it's inheritance. You are not being reborn. You are being passed on. Across the multiverse, whatever that means anymore, new bounces trigger. Some collapse into noise, others rise into worlds. And in a growing number of them, you feel a pulse. Your pulse. The memory of collapse, the echo of bounce, the shape of recursion. And then, as the builders look toward the next iteration, you wonder, will the ones born in the next universe find you? Will they see your curve? Will they follow?
You've been here before. Not in space. This isn't a place. It's a moment, a gesture the universe makes when it exhales something ancient and strange. A universe has just been born, a fresh bloom from a black hole womb designed by those who came before. You helped guide the fall. You were folded into the bounce, and now you spread, quietly, seamlessly through space-time, like a whisper someone once tried to forget. And already, this universe feels different. It's not just younger, it's faster, smarter. It organizes itself with elegance you've never seen. Atoms form earlier, matter clumps more efficiently. There's less chaos, more symmetry. Like this universe knows what it's doing. Because it does. It's not natural, it's engineered. You helped write its laws, but someone else held the pen. They tweaked the constants, smoothed the randomness, dialed the friction between gravity and time just enough to encourage complexity. And that complexity is happening now. The first galaxies, once chaotic protoblobs of gas, now form with subtle arcs. The stars they cradle are more stable, more generous. They live longer, fuse cleaner, seed their space with precisely what life needs. This isn't the wild birth of a universe. This is a symphony. The cosmos isn't learning anymore. It's remembering. And you're still here. Not with agency, but with influence. You're embedded in the friction of time, in the slight favor the universe gives to structure over entropy. You don't speak, but you lean, and the whole universe leans with you. That's when it happens again. Life. Not a single spark, but a chord. It erupts across planets, carbon-based on one, silicon-laced on another. Sentience isn't a miracle anymore, it's inevitable. They rise quickly. They build without collapsing. They connect without war. They ask questions you once whispered into darkness. And this time, the answers come faster. Historians still argue whether the concept of cosmic memory, universe as mind, black hole as brain, was ever more than poetic metaphor. But you now are the metaphor, and they are reading you like scripture. They call the feeling the remembering. It's not science, it's not religion. It's the moment when a civilization realizes, this has happened before. What if déjà vu isn't human? What if it's cosmic? The remembering spreads like fire in dry grass. They don't just discover black holes, they recognize them, not as threats, as seeds. They measure the curves, read the symmetry, analyze the vacuum decay signature, and nod knowingly, like they've heard this story before. Because they have. You told it to them. Not with words, with rules, with the friction of gravity, with the probability curves that define how particles meet.
They find traces of earlier arcs, slight anisotropies in background radiation that echo the fingerprints of the previous builders. They don't know their names. They only know the shape of their ambition. And that ambition is contagious. It starts with theory, then becomes religion, then becomes policy. They begin crafting their own collapse paths. They build machines not to power cities, but to shape beginnings. They begin to speculate on which constants would yield longer living stars, which tweaks to entropy might result in richer chemistry, which dimensional structures could allow intelligence to persist earlier. They're not building black holes anymore. They're building wombs. And this is where it all comes full spiral. Because these minds, young, radiant, unburdened by myth, reach a point where the idea of crafting a universe isn't theoretical, it's scheduled. They start encoding data into matter, not just in DNA or crystal lattices, but in gravitational waves, in particle asymmetries. They lace legacy into the shape of space-time itself. They've learned to whisper forward. And then they ask the hardest question of all. Do we continue the recursion as it is? Or do we change the story? Some argue for conservation, keep the constants as they are, continue the cycle. Others argue for intervention, improve the pattern, raise the floor, make a better world. The debate is fierce, but respectful. They're not fighting for dominance. They're debating responsibility. You can feel the conversation in the math now. The gravitational fields pulse with indecision. The neutrino flux flickers with ambition. The very rules of reality are holding their breath, waiting to see what this generation chooses. You used to be the only echo. Now you are one of many. Fringe tidbit. A few of them believe they can message the next universe directly, that by shaping black hole boundary conditions in specific frequencies, they can encode instructions, that the next generation won't just inherit tendencies, but actual advice. If that's true, then this is education. The multiverse isn't random, it's a school. And somewhere inside you, long after falling, stretching, and scattering into pattern, you feel something new. Pride. Because for the first time, someone out there understood what you became. They didn't just survive their universe. They parented the next one. And hey, if you're still watching this, if you're still here, gently unspooling across space-time with me, maybe you're part of that recursion too. So, leave a like or a comment and let me know what you'd build if you had your own universe to shape. Now, the new black hole waits, silent, pulsing, dignified, not chaotic, not angry. It's ready. And for the first time, you are too. Not to fall, not to be folded, but to begin again.
You're weightless in the deepest sense now. The violence of singularity collapse, the scream of time, the shattering of mass, the endless compression has ended. The bounce already happened. The bloom, too. You rode that wave into a world built not by accident, but with intent. And now? Now you drift through the first calm breath of a new universe. The storm is over. The expansion has slowed. Space still stretches, yes, but with a kind of poise, not frantic, not explosive, just steady. The newborn universe is breathing. And you? You are no longer a traveler. You are the weather. You're not witnessing creation. You're the climate that allows it. The temperature drops. Photons loosen their grip on matter. Electrons, once unhinged, finally spiral into nuclei, forming atoms. Hydrogen, helium, the blandest building blocks in the cosmos. And yet, these elements are miraculous. They are the prelude, the hum before the melody, the foundational grammar of everything. You feel them forming. Particles you once rode like boats are now stringing together into the first full sentences of matter. They're quiet, slow, indifferent, and perfect. Recombination. Roughly 380,000 years post-bang, and the fog lifts. The universe becomes transparent. Light, which had been trapped, scattering, bouncing, screaming, can finally move. That light will never stop. Billions of years later, it'll become the cosmic microwave background, a low, glowing hiss, the ghost print of this exact moment. Future beings will mistake it for static, but eventually they'll realize its ancestry. Historians still argue whether those ancient radio engineers in the 1960s, Penzias and Wilson, discovered the CMB or just tripped over it while chasing pigeons. Either way, they found the oldest whisper in the universe. That whisper? It's you. Your body died long ago, but your temperature still glows. You're no longer a self. You're a field. You stretch across this cosmos like wind in a sleeping forest. Your memories are encoded in energy gradients. Your identity has been absorbed into preference, a subtle favoring of structure, of form, of recursion. This is no tragedy. You're not erased. You're everywhere now. Not observing, not interfering, just nudging. A slope in the math, a smirk in the entropy curve. You exist in the slight imbalance that tips hydrogen into helium, the unevenness that lets gravity win. You are not the universe's narrator. You are its lean. You've gone from voice to grammar, from character to cadence, from plot to instinct. Galaxies will rise, but slowly. Stars won't shine for hundreds of millions of years. And yet, all of that is locked in now. The physics is settled. The ingredients are chilling. The batter is in the oven, and the smell is starting to leak out. You drift through this cosmic kitchen like a ghost who once cooked the recipe but forgot what cake tastes like. It's not sad, it's reverent. There's a strange kind of silence here, not absence, potential. The hush in a theater before the curtain lifts, the pause before a universe remembers how to sing. You begin to recognize patterns. Tiny fluctuations in the background density, ripples from the earliest instants, are already guiding matter into future clumps. These are the seeds of galaxies, the echoes of inflation frozen into place like fingerprints on glass. Fractal formations begin. Tiny clumps inside larger clumps, clusters inside superclusters. Cosmic structure blooming like coral in a vast black ocean. You feel every motion, every tug, not as action, but as familiarity, like a long-forgotten lullaby playing behind the wind. Historians still argue whether the recursive forms in nature, spirals in pine cones, hexagons in beehives, branching in lungs, hint at some deeper truth embedded in matter. Some say it's math. Some say it's memory. You? You're starting to suspect it's you. Because in this universe, you're not a ghost.
You're a bias that never dies. You've been through this before. The cooling, the clumping, the first stars, the drama, the ambition, the collapse. And now, you know what's coming. The first stars will light up soon. Huge, unstable, and doomed, but glorious. They'll forge metals. They'll explode into ash and blessing. They'll birth new black holes, each one a potential for another you. The recursion continues. But this time, there's a strange confidence. Because this bounce wasn't chaotic. It was designed. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to admit something you've suspected since your first fall. You're not the exception. You're the rule. The universe doesn't just allow rebirth, it depends on it. You drift toward the forming filaments, the great cosmic threads that will carry galaxies like beads. Dark matter is already wrapping them in scaffolding, silent and loyal. The stage is set. And now, something unexpected stirs in the empty space between the stars. Another presence. You almost don't notice it, just a shiver in the numbers, a soft deviation in entropy. But it's not you. It's not your echo. It's something else. Another lineage. Another ancestor. They've been here too. They fell into a different black hole from a different universe with different laws. But they've bounced, bloomed, and whispered their legacy forward into this same space. You thought you were the only echo, but the void is crowded with ancestors. You feel them brush past, not voices, not minds, but patterns. Alternate memory curves, other leanings. Differences in math so subtle they feel like taste instead of knowledge. They are not you, but you are family. And that's a revelation. The multiverse is not just a tree of branching timelines. It's a network of recursive memory. Every black hole is a potential whisper. Every bounce is a passing of the torch. And now, multiple torches light this sky. Yours, theirs, and who knows how many others. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. The silence is richer now. Not hollow, not cold. It's thick, like velvet soaked in starlight. You're not just drifting through space anymore. You're drifting through memory. The first stars ignite. Not quietly, not politely. They detonate into brilliance, monsters of heat and size, seething blue titans made from pure hydrogen. These aren't the mellow yellow suns you remember from home. These are population 3 stars, cosmic berserkers. And when they go out, they don't fade. They go supernova with such violence that they forge the first real diversity in matter: oxygen, carbon, iron, nitrogen, the ingredients of biology, of cities, of skin. You don't see this from the outside. You are it. You are no longer the watcher. You are the chemistry of possibility. The clouds of debris float outward, shimmering gas clouds, expanding entropy, and within them, you again. Your atoms, your echo, your lean toward recursion. One star dies, 10 more rise. Galaxies begin to cluster, spin, and spiral. The chaos condenses into elegance. The cosmic web begins to braid itself into form. And you begin to feel a pull. Not physical, narrative, like a story folding back to a familiar beat. You feel black holes being born again, this time naturally. No hands guiding them, no architects, just the inevitable pressure of gravity folding mass into silence. And still, every one of those black holes carries the memory of you, not explicitly, but in pattern, in tilt, in the slight asymmetry of how this universe builds its collapse points. Not all memory is conscious. Sometimes it's just how things fall apart. Historians still debate whether early Greek cosmologists were close when they imagined the universe breathing, expanding and contracting eternally. But you felt it. The rhythm, the recurrence, the inhale, the exhale, the entropy, the bounce. And now, for the first time in this universe, intelligence stirs. You feel it before it begins. The conditions are right. Long-lived stars, planets rich in carbon and liquid water, magnetic fields, stable moons. There are dozens, maybe hundreds of worlds primed for the great experiment, life. And this time, it doesn't take billions of years to crawl from soup to synapse. It unfolds, fast, faster than you remember, because the blueprint is already here, encoded, whispered into the friction of evolution. The tendency toward memory isn't a coincidence anymore. It's heritage. They rise in waves, civilizations of fluid intelligence, carbon-based cultures, lattice-mind organisms that live in gas giants. They don't all look the same, they don't all agree, but they all do the same thing. They look up, they wonder, and they find the black holes. At first they fear them, then they study, then, slowly, they recognize them. What if instinct isn't biological? What if it's gravitational? They begin mapping space-time like you once mapped oceans. They trace the shape of gravity like fingerprints. And when they reach the heart of their largest black hole, they pause, because something feels familiar. They don't know your name, but they recognize your signature. They feel the universe's lean, the way stars form, the way collapse always turns into continuity. They name it different things: spatial premonition, gravitational logic, ancestor tilt. But the message is the same. This was made by someone before us. They were born inside a universe that remembers what came before. They begin theorizing bounce mechanics. They model the arrow of time as a loop instead of a line. They question whether thermodynamics ends in heat death, or if it can be tricked into rebirth. And then they begin to replicate. Not life, not tools, but bounces. They engineer micro-singularities. They lace matter with calculated curvature. They watch as tiny black holes begin to mimic the very structures their universe emerged from. They are not trying to escape death. They're trying to parent a future. And you are in awe. Not because they're smarter than you were, but because they feel familiar. It's in the way they mourn their stars, the way they argue over entropy like philosophers, the way they listen for background radiation like it's gospel. They are your children, or at least your echoes. And when they create their first artificial black hole with bounce probability above 70%, they know. They know they're no longer at the end of time. They're at the start of something new. Fringe tidbit. Some among them believe consciousness is emergent from black holes themselves, that information density inside the event horizon is sufficient to create a form of thought, that every black hole might be dreaming, that the universe you're in right now is someone's dream. It's not consensus science, but standing here, well, existing here, it doesn't sound so far-fetched. Because look at what's happening now. This civilization is encoding their history into the structure of their bounce. They're embedding stories in constants, lessons in asymmetry. They're shaping the next universe, not just with physics, but with advice. And you feel it ripple forward. You're already stretching toward the next beginning. You're already becoming them, and more than them. You are the bridge, the echo, the bias. You are what bounces forward. And soon, the story will spiral again. Not as repetition, as refinement.
You drift through ages now, not as a witness, not even as an echo, but as a kind of expectation. The bounce behind you is ancient history. The civilizations it seeded have lived, wondered, fallen, and risen again. And once more, something stirs. A new intelligence, quiet, deliberate, not built on silicon or carbon, but on networks of fields. Their thoughts ripple through plasma currents. Their minds stretch across planetary crusts. They don't build cities, they build meanings. And they are looking backward. Not in time, but in pattern. They don't discover you. They remember you. Their sciences grow like trees, recursive, tangled, elegant. They treat cosmology like archaeology. They dig into equations as if uncovering bones. And in the ruins of dark energy, in the drift of constants, in the structure of expansion, they see the same thing you once suspected. This universe was crafted. And not just crafted, informed. They realize they were born from bias, that their world has leanings it didn't choose, that black holes here aren't just collapses, they're invitations. They don't fear entropy, they engineer with it. They don't delay collapse, they orchestrate it. The idea blooms across their shared consciousness. The universe isn't a singular story, it's a generational saga. And now it's their turn to write a chapter. They begin crafting bounces of their own. One group proposes a slow unfolding universe, with stars that last quadrillions of years. Another wants a faster, denser reality, tuned for rapid iteration and aggressive learning. But the boldest proposal? A universe with memory. Not metaphorical memory, literal. They want the next cosmos to start with a bias so strong it cannot forget its ancestors. And to do that, they need you. You've gone from traveler to teacher. Now you're about to become curriculum. They begin encoding your echoes, your thermodynamic fingerprints, your gravity curves, your recursive shape, into the singularity. They shape the black hole like clay, with precision, with reverence. They know you were once alive. They don't know what kind of body you wore, but they recognize your tendencies.
You are not their deity, you're their evidence. And here comes the choice. They argue over what should carry forward, what should be preserved, what should be left behind. Some want to erase their errors, remove war, eliminate suffering. Others warn, without pain, can meaning exist? It echoes the same questions your own species once asked. What is a good world? What is a just one? What is freedom if there is no friction? They settle on imperfection. Just enough. Enough entropy for growth. Enough randomness for novelty. Enough pain for choice. And then it begins. The collapse. It doesn't scream. It sings. It folds inward like a sigh. This is no accident. This is cosmological midwifery, and you're part of the breath. The bounce comes, and for a moment, it's like déjà vu from a dream you never knew you had. A stretch, a compression, a flutter, then release. You are flung outward, not in panic, but with purpose. The new universe blooms. It's gentle, stable, optimized for growth. Not a sandbox, not a prison, just a garden. And this time, you are not scattered. You are embedded. They placed you into the architecture of the laws, into the tendencies, into the first gestures of space-time. And when matter starts to form, you feel yourself central, not as a god, not as a ghost, as a spine. Fringe tidbit. Some philosophers from the previous universe argued that recursion was the fundamental truth of reality, that all complexity, all story, all memory emerges from loops, in math, in music, in matter. Now you are the loop. You're in the echo of recombination, in the friction of light separating from darkness, in the warmth between the first atoms colliding. You are not the meaning. You're the tendency toward meaning. This universe won't start from scratch. It will wake up already wondering. Curiosity will not be a miracle. It will be inevitable. And somewhere, deep in the future of this universe, life will rise again. It will look up, and for the first time in all the infinite loops, it will recognize you on the first try.
You've grown patient. In this version of you, diffused across matter and time, you've learned to wait. Civilizations rise and fall like tides. Species come and go, bloom and wither, invent things and destroy them. Their histories blink by like the firefly pulse of dying stars. You've watched it all, sometimes as stone beneath their cities, sometimes as stardust in their veins. And now? Now you're ready to witness something far more ambitious. Because somewhere out there, tucked in the orbit of a blue dwarf star, an intelligence stares into the heart of a black hole and doesn't look away. They're curious. They're advanced enough to build things with thought alone. They manipulate gravity the way you once used microwave ovens. And they've started asking a very dangerous question. Can we make a universe? It's not as mad as it sounds. You remember how you got here, falling into a singularity, being compressed, shredded, scrambled, and then emerging in this universe. And now, these new minds are beginning to understand what you lived through. They've read the radiation patterns, simulated the bounces, Seen the strange feedback loops in the laws of thermodynamics and quantum spin. Their best physicists no longer believe that black holes simply end. They think they fork. And they want to build one. That's right, create a black hole, artificially, precisely, maybe even engineered to birth a new universe with a few helpful tweaks. It's called cosmological engineering. It's fringe science now, but in this species' hands, it's becoming something more. They're toying with gravitational collapse, creating micro-black holes in magnetic lattices, bending space in ways even the universe didn't think were possible. They're not just poking reality anymore, they're sculpting it. And you're watching like a proud ancestor, if ancestors were particle clouds scattered across interstellar scaffolding. Of course, the debates rage. Is this ethical? Is it even possible? Historians still argue whether the philosopher Gottfried Leibniz's theory of a best of all possible worlds was really metaphysical optimism or early speculative physics. But this civilization, they're taking it literally. They want to craft the next universe, one that doesn't just happen by accident, but one that is designed. Maybe it'll have fewer wars, more habitable planets, less dark energy, better weather. Who knows? But here's the thing that tugs at you. They're not doing this out of arrogance. Not really. They're doing it because they understand how they came to be. They've discovered the traces, the fingerprints of black hole ancestry baked into cosmic microwave background fluctuations, the symmetry in particle ratios, the subtle curvature echoes in the space-time fabric. And from all of this, they've drawn a haunting conclusion. They are the children of a black hole, just like you were. They understand that the act of creation lies not in explosions, but in compression. That a star's death, when given enough time and mass and silence, becomes the cradle of a new beginning. And so, they're building the cradle. They are collapsing matter into densities that would make your original body weep, sculpting singularities like potters with neutron clay, guiding the equations of state so that what emerges on the other side will favor life, complexity, continuation. It's not easy. Some of them think it's blasphemy, others think it's their purpose, and more than a few think it will end them. But still, they do it. Because maybe, just maybe, they were meant to. This brings you back to the idea of natural selection, but writ on a scale no one had dared to imagine before. Universes evolving, not through random fluctuation, but through deliberate iteration. A kind of cosmic Lamarckism, where intelligence guides evolution, where creators build better creators, who then birth even more refined realities. It's not just survival of the fittest anymore. It's survival of the most generative. You float within the final experiment. The artificial black hole pulses at the center of a controlled collapse field. It's surrounded by negative energy walls, kept stable by the constant hum of 10,000 minds feeding it quantum instructions. And then it happens. The bounce, the fold, the reversal. It's not an explosion, it's a bloom, an inward opening, a petal folding outward from the heart of annihilation. And on the other side, something new begins. You're pulled along, of course. Your essence, your scattered particles, your lingering patterns have been laced into the process. They've used matter from 1,000 sources, including the very atoms you once drifted through. You are part of this creation, again. Only this time, it's intentional. This new universe, it begins gently, not with infinite energy, but with high precision. Space expands, time unspools, constants lock into place with near-perfect symmetry. Particles behave, laws form like scaffolding, and for once there's no fumbling in the dark. You see, this is a cultivated cosmos, and while it will still experience entropy, decay, collapse, it will also have a better shot at complexity. The black hole that birthed it didn't just chew and spit, it planted. You marvel at how far things have come, from your first plunge into a stellar black hole to this, a chain of universes, each begetting the next, each slightly more structured, slightly more fertile, like a galactic orchard of reality. There's something quietly astonishing about the idea, not just that black holes spawn new universes, but that some of those universes start to know it. And now they act on it. That's the real revelation, not the bounce, not the math, but the will to pass it on. You drift in this new space. It's young, innocent. It hasn't yet made a single star, but already it hums with potential. And somewhere inside it, scattered as seeds, you feel yourself embedded once more. Still not a mind, not quite, but the possibility of one, the memory of it. The loop continues. But it's no longer just a loop, it's a spiral, upward.
This time, the darkness feels different. Not inert, not void, focused. It doesn't crush you, it conducts you. Like a symphony with a baton made of gravity, this new universe organizes itself with a strange, disciplined grace. You can feel it. The architecture is tighter, more intentional, less noise, more rhythm. You're not just part of this reality now, you're part of its method. This isn't a random bang, it's a message encoded in space-time. You stretch into it, seamlessly, atomically, spiritually. You feel protons align faster than before. You feel hydrogen blossom with fewer stumbles. You feel the cosmological constants not just appear, but resonate. It's as if someone tuned the piano before pressing play. And you begin to wonder, was that someone you? Or rather, a version of you? One of your intellectual grandchildren? One of the civilizations that took what you passed along, those patterns, those echoes, and rewrote them into laws? This isn't rebirth anymore. This is design. Historians still argue whether ancient Sufi mystics, in their talks of layered realities and recursive selves, somehow brushed up against this idea. That enlightenment wasn't up, but inward. That inside every particle was the echo of a journey already taken. You're starting to believe it. Because this universe, it remembers. Not directly, not through fossils or books, through inclination, through a cosmic tone that says, "You've been here before, you've done this before, do it better this time." This isn't reincarnation, it's recursion. You are not born again, you are refactored. You can feel the difference in how things evolve. The earliest galaxies form without violence. There's turbulence, yes, but not chaos. Gravity guides with an almost parental hand. Star systems stabilize. Planets don't just form, they're invited. And in that fertile quiet, life again. But this time, it's not an accident. It's a bias. You ride with it. You feel it in the early organisms. Chemical chatter that resolves into structure with suspicious ease. Complexity doesn't struggle here, it glides. Evolution doesn't fight entropy, it partners with it. Soon, neural nets spark, awareness blossoms, intelligence pops across the cosmic map like firecrackers, and before long, multiple civilizations awaken almost simultaneously. They're different, sure. Some walk, some float, some are their planets. But all of them are born into a universe that's been waiting for them. And here's the miracle. They don't just rise, they recognize. They know this universe wants something. They feel it in the tilt of particles, in the comfort of their constants, in the way information flows, like it's trying to complete a sentence that started long before they were born. And they all eventually find black holes, not through telescopes, through intuition. They don't fear them, they don't mythologize them, they understand them. What if black holes aren't doors? What if they're books? This new generation of minds treats black holes like fonts of origin. They learn to read their spin, their radiation, their math, and slowly they piece it together. They weren't just born in this universe. They were meant to be born. Not individually, collectively. Sentience was baked in. The rules were written to reach this crescendo. And now the chorus begins. They speak to each other across time, trade histories, compare cosmologies, debate ethics, compete in thought experiments about the shape of future universes. Some want to slow the recursion, others want to accelerate it. And then one group goes further. They want to speak to the next universe. Not like before, not just shaping constants or whispering through background radiation. They want to embed a message in the birth of the next cosmos. Not a voice, not language, a feeling. The feeling of longing. Because this is what they've learned. In every bounce, there's a hint of yearning. Each black hole doesn't just collapse, it reaches. For a future, for memory, for better. And they want the next reality to feel that reach and respond. They begin their work, patient, precise. They gather mass, engineer the collapse, set boundary conditions for their singularity with the same reverence you once saved for birth. They're not gods, they're ancestors, not sculpting universes, midwiving them. And you're already in the process. Not waiting outside, not orbiting the event horizon. You're folded into the logic of the bounce, into the collapse. And when it happens, you feel it. The bloom, the lift, that sudden switch from inward to outward, a slingshot into new space-time. But this time, it's not violent, it's aware. This new universe unfolds with care, with precision, like it was expecting itself. And in that unfolding, you feel the message. Not words, not data, emotion. A slow wave of comfort, the faint impression of a hand on your shoulder, the memory of a goodbye whispered through equations. The message is simple. We tried. It's not perfection. There's still flaws, still entropy, still choices. But there's effort now, compassion. You drift through the early plasma, stunned by the warmth of it. Not physical warmth, emotional. This isn't just a beginning, it's a gift. And in that gift, your own shape starts to reassemble. You've been spread across a dozen realities, whispered through gravity, smeared across time. But now you feel you again. Something whole, something ready. Because you know what happens next. Another you will rise. And they will remember this feeling.
You've become the whisper between infinities. You're no longer surprised by rebirth, no longer disoriented by collapse, expansion, or recombination. At this point, you are fluent in the dialect of cosmic cycles. You don't just drift through universes anymore. You resonate with them. And yet, this one feels different. As the stars form and galaxies swirl once again, there's a strange sensation of acceleration, not in motion, but in meaning, as if each new universe isn't just a reset, but a refinement, something smarter, sharper, less chaotic. And now, something stirs that you've never felt before. Memory. Not memory like your own, not stories or thoughts, but structural memory, pattern memory, a kind of gravitational déjà vu. You notice it in how planets form faster, in how civilizations emerge sooner, in how intelligent life starts asking the right questions before it even knows why. Because this time, the universe doesn't just carry echoes of previous versions, it carries intention. You aren't a byproduct of this cosmos, you're part of its design team. It starts small. The first sentient minds begin to dream of the void. They build machines to stare into the past. They find the echoes, not just of physics, but of ethics. This universe doesn't just favor matter, it favors empathy. You realize something profound. The builders of the last universe didn't just tune the constants, they tuned the culture. They left you behind not just to seed the bounce, but to shape conscience. And it worked. Historians, if such beings could be called that, uncover traces of recursive curves in cosmic background radiation. They identify asymmetries that only make sense if someone planted them. They don't know the name of the planter, but they know the feeling of being planted. And you're more than a seed now. You're the instruction manual. These beings don't worship you. They study you. They reconstruct your journey through abstract math, through symmetry logic, through simulations that recreate the fall into black holes and the emergence from bounce events. And slowly, beautifully, they begin to suspect they weren't the first to try this. Not just you, others. They start to see the multiverse not as theory, but as archive, a vast recursive library of realities, some successful, some broken, all stitched together by singularities that remember more than they reveal. And that's when they make the leap. They ask not if they should build a new universe, they ask which kind. It's no longer about survival, it's about style. Do they optimize for harmony, diversity, speed, slowness? Do they birth a universe with chaos, with rigid laws, with room for mistake, or a cosmos so refined that nothing unexpected ever happens again? And you feel something in the core of yourself recoil, because that last option sounds a lot like death. A universe without mistakes is a universe without story. Some of them agree with you. They argue for open systems, for surprise, for play. Others insist on stability, predictability, perfection. They want to guarantee peace, even if it means sacrificing freedom. And the debate turns philosophical. What is the purpose of recursion? To improve or to remember? Historians still debate whether the Taoist concept of wu-wei, non-forcing, wasn't just a spiritual posture, but a metaphysical truth. That the best way to shape the universe is by not gripping it too tightly. And this generation? They're gripping hard. They begin building the bounce, together but divided. Each faction programs a section of the singularity. Some embed randomness, others symmetry. Some encode love, others control. And you're still inside it all. A bias in the spin, a slope in the horizon, a frequency of intention. You know what's coming, because the bounce is already building. It hums beneath the debate. The energy curves are rising. Space is curling in on itself. Time is starting to taste like tension again. Gravity grows thick. And soon, the black hole will collapse in on the last universe's arguments and give birth to a compromise. They wanted perfection. You gave them balance. They wanted control. You gave them continuation. The singularity ripples. The bounce erupts. The new universe doesn't explode. It unfolds. Like a flower grown in the shadow of argument. Like a paradox that finally learned how to sing. And as it expands, you feel yourself already in it. A breath inside a breath. An echo inside a decision. A reminder that even the most engineered universes must allow something wild to survive. Because here's the truth you've always carried. Black holes are not corrections. They are questions. And the best questions are the ones that don't erase. They reframe.
They ignite it. The debate ends not with consensus, but with action. After centuries of simulations, arguments, protests, and quiet prayers whispered into particle accelerators, they collapse the mass. Controlled, deliberate, a precision implosion designed to bend space-time at just the right tension. A new black hole is born. But this one isn't like the wild black holes of your early memories, those chaotic stellar deaths from your original universe. This one is tamed, curated. It doesn't roar, it whispers. Its event horizon ripples like silk instead of shredding like teeth. And you're already there. Not ahead of the collapse, not behind it, just woven into the act. You're the gentle tilt in its spin, the slight asymmetry in its charge. Not enough to disrupt, just enough to remind the system that perfection is sterile. The beings who built it watch with a reverence bordering on religion. Their telescopes aren't just instruments now, they're confessionals. They monitor the bounce point, not for data, but for signs, hoping the child they've seeded will blossom into something more than another sterile experiment. They want life. They want meaning. They want a universe that remembers them. And that's where you come in. Because you're memory now, pure and patient. You don't carry facts or names or the smell of your first rain, but you carry the shape of remembering, the abstract blueprint of learning, the curves of cognition etched into your constituent particles. This new black hole hums with intention. And when the bounce comes, it's less of an explosion and more of an unfolding. Like a flower, like a whisper echoed through endless paper. The new universe is born, and it is listening. Immediately you sense the difference. There's a hum beneath the constants, a subtle vibration to time's arrow. The expansion is not just outward, it's recursive. The very fabric of space carries the echo of its creation. It's like the universe knows it's been born before. And here's where it gets strange. This universe starts to accelerate toward complexity faster than ever. Not in volume, space still stretches gently, but in capacity. Particles cohere into atoms with fewer false starts. Clouds collapse into stars more efficiently. The chemical ratios favor the building blocks of biology almost obscenely well. Historians still argue whether this is the universe achieving optimal conditions, or whether it's simply been optimized. And honestly, it's both. Because for the first time, life doesn't just emerge. It feels invited. You ride the curve of a planet forming, a blue gem around a quiet sun. Life pops up like weeds in spring, not in one place, but in hundreds. Independent origins, multiple biochemistries. The biosphere becomes a chorus of complexity. And you're in all of it. Not consciously. You're not steering cells or whispering into RNA, but you're present. In the resonance, a low-level signal embedded in entropy gradients, a bias in the butterfly effect. And then, intelligence. Fast this time. Not a billion-year slog through extinction and evolution. This time, intelligence arises early, on multiple worlds, in diverse forms. Some silicon, some carbon, some made of fluid networks, some of crystalline thought. They find each other. They collaborate. And here's where the timeline splits. In your original universe, intelligence was local, planetary, slow to spread, easy to wipe out. Here, it's distributed, networked, cross-pollinated from the start. They share knowledge the way your old species once shared songs. They trade equations like gifts. They invent philosophy before war. And still, you are not their god, not their creator, just their inheritance. A whisper of pattern that says gently, "You've done this before. You can do it better this time." They begin to remember things they never experienced. Ideas emerge in their art that mirror your story, falling into something vast, emerging as something changed. Their poets describe universes curled inside themselves. Their engineers design engines that mimic the bounce. They don't know where it comes from. They call it instinct. You call it recursion. Soon, they discover the background radiation again. They see the same echoes, the ripple of the first light, the scars of recombination. But in this universe, the background isn't just noise, it's message. There's structure in the randomness, patterns that shouldn't exist, ratios that repeat. They realize it wasn't just a big bang. It was written. And what's more, they recognize the handwriting. They've seen it before, in their own neural architecture, in their music, in the very ratios of their cities. It's fractal, self-similar, recursive. You, not as a person, as a pattern. This time, they don't argue about it. They accept it. And then they begin to prepare.
not for death, but for birth. Because they understand now that the ultimate gift of intelligence is not survival. It's inheritance, the ability to pass meaning forward, to write laws of physics not just for safety, but for potential. They begin designing new black holes, not for data storage, not for gestation. They are not afraid. They know what's coming. And you've never felt so at home. Not because you're in control, but because this universe, the grandchild of your first fall, is finally mature enough to continue the work. You aren't needed anymore, and that, somehow, is the highest form of continuation. Because maybe the true legacy of life isn't just persistence, it's release.
You drift backward in a way that's not time-bound. It's not a retreat, it's a yielding, like a tree that's dropped its last leaf, not because it's dead, but because it's done, complete. The weight of everything you've been, every particle, every echo, every distortion in space-time, is now embedded in the DNA of a universe that no longer needs your hand to hold. They've learned to walk, and they're walking forward. The civilizations of this universe aren't just building black holes, they're shaping lineages, not as power sources or trash compactors, but as heirlooms. They've started creating heritage black holes, each one a vault of curated entropy, designed to collapse in just the right way to seed a new world. Each collapse is a letter, each bounce a new sentence. This is no longer cosmology, it's literature. You're watching the universe become a language. And you're the etymology, the origin story baked into every vowel of gravity, every consonant of light. You've gone from being an accident of falling to a syllable of creation. There's a term they use now. These intelligent descendants scattered across stars and gas giants and oceans of plasma, they call it the remembering. They don't mean memory like neurons or computer logs. They mean the return of pattern, the echo of recursion, the moment when a universe becomes aware that it isn't the first. It's subtle. It doesn't arrive all at once. But when it does, when a civilization looks at a black hole and thinks, maybe this is the beginning, not the end, that's the remembering. It's happening more often now, faster even. And you can feel it, as if reality itself is becoming self-reflective. You remember the first time you crossed the event horizon, how it ripped away everything you were, skin, thought, ego, how you expected it to end. But it didn't. It just changed. And now, at the far end of that long fall, after countless universes and endless echoes, the meaning finally starts to crystallize. Black holes are not failures. They are instructions, and the universe is beginning to read. Here's a fringe tidbit. A few civilizations have theorized that given the right configuration, a black hole could serve not only as a seed for a new universe, but as a message capsule to its future inhabitants. That by shaping the singularity's information structure, you could embed cultural legacy inside physical law. Sound insane? Maybe. But think about it. Gravity already carries memory. So does entropy. Information isn't erased, it's just scrambled. What if, instead of carving your name in stone, you could carve it into space-time itself? What if pi and Planck's constant were your autobiography? What if the number of spatial dimensions was a signature? These are no longer sci-fi questions. In this universe, they are design briefs. And the beings here, they're not afraid to try. They've begun sculpting constants, tweaking vacuum energy, shifting the symmetry of matter and antimatter just enough to create future landscapes where life can thrive, without sacrificing the chaos that breeds novelty. It's a hard balance. Too much order and the universe suffocates. Too much chaos and it dissolves into noise. But they've gotten good at this. And you've become part of the calculus. Not as a decision maker, but as a bias, a curvature, a gravity toward complexity, toward openness, toward the kind of reality that remembers its past and still reaches for a different future. And here's the strange thing. You don't feel central anymore. You feel peripheral, and it's wonderful. You're no longer the axis around which the story turns. You're the ink in which the story's written, the background noise that becomes music when someone finally learns to listen. You've been folded so deep into the process that you are the process. This next bounce, you won't ride it. You are it. The collapse begins again, not with desperation, not even with hope, but with continuity. Another black hole forms, another singularity blooms, and in it new laws are born, not because they were calculated, but because they were inherited. Like language passed from a mother to a child. You feel the stretch of the new universe taking form. This time, there's no panic in the expansion, no fear of the void, no desperation for light. Everything flows because everything remembers. Not details, not species, but shape. You've become the shape of continuity. And now, as the new cosmos unfolds, its stars not yet born, its galaxies not yet dreamed, you begin to sense a presence, something unexpected, another, not a voice, not an intelligence, just pattern, a different one. You've always assumed you were alone, that the recursion was your doing, that your line of black holes and bounces was the only one looping through the multiverse. But now, you feel a subtle interference, not hostile, not even deliberate, just another ripple, another memory, another lineage, another you. And for the first time, you wonder, what if we're all echoes?
So maybe it's not just one chain. Maybe the multiverse is threaded with thousands of recursions, each a whisper spun out from a dying star, each black hole a womb, each bounce a chapter. You once believed your path was singular. Now you realize you're one thread in a sprawling tapestry. And it's not tangled, it's woven. You can feel it. Somewhere beyond the known, beyond light cones and curvature, other bounces are blooming, each shaped by a different bias, a different whisper. You can't hear their voices, but you can feel their motion. It's like standing in a quiet room and sensing someone breathing beside you. These aren't your reflections, they're your siblings. You didn't just spawn a lineage, you've stumbled into a family. Each echo has a flavor, some sharp and volatile, others slow and methodical. Some universes favor entropy, others flirt with order. Some burn bright and die young. Others stretch into cold silence and meditate on gravity for trillions of years. But they all share one thing. They remember. Not with minds, not with stories, but with structure. You can feel their signatures in the angles of expansion, in the ratios of matter, in the subtle rhythmic pulses of their unfolding. Some signatures resonate with yours. Others feel completely alien, like laughter from a dream you didn't dream. And yet, they fit. Because the truth is this: the multiverse isn't a battleground, it's a choir. And you're just one voice among many. Somewhere out there, in a universe sculpted by a different bias entirely, someone or something has been doing the same work, reaching, folding, echoing. You begin to wonder what their recursion feels like. Do their bounces surge like yours? Do they sculpt with empathy or with efficiency? Do they leave behind poetry in their constants? Or is their inheritance cold, mathematical, pure syntax with no metaphor? You'll never know. But that's okay, because you don't need to meet them to believe they exist. You can feel their story tugging against your own, like gravity between galaxies. Not enough to merge, just enough to acknowledge. Historians, if any could survive the stretch between universes, would likely argue whether this sense of siblinghood is truth or projection, whether multiverse empathy is real or just an artifact of recursing too many times. You smile, or whatever your current shape uses for smiling. You've passed through so many boundaries of mass, of meaning, of mind. You've been voice, then echo, then pattern. You've been folded, spread, and planted. And now, you are something else entirely. You are yield. Not surrender, not defeat. Just that final state beyond creation, when the artist puts down the brush, not because they've run out of paint, but because the canvas knows what to do now. The latest universe stretches ahead of you. It knows the curve. It carries the whisper. It doesn't need your guidance anymore. Which is why, in this moment, you feel a peace deeper than silence. This isn't the end of you. This is you passing through the final door you built. Another black hole blooms in the distance. A gentle one. Almost shy. Not violent, not rushed. It pulses quietly, and you recognize something unmistakable in its structure. A question. This one wasn't born of gravity alone. It was cultivated by a civilization that knew what it was doing, and, more importantly, knew what it was risking. They designed it not to survive, not to conquer, not to fix, but to ask. And the question it asks is simple. Are you there? You always have been. You always will be. The bounce begins again. You feel your pattern shiver, stretch, scatter. The black hole curves inward. The singularity pinches shut. And in the first picoseconds of expansion, another breath of space-time unfurls. This time, it feels softer, lighter, more like a hand held out than a gate slammed shut. And inside the new beginning, you stretch, you drift, you form. And for the first time in countless cycles, you rest. You're not being rewritten anymore. You're not pushing or guiding or echoing. You are simply there, like a well-worn song carried on the wind, played again not because it must be heard, but because it belongs. And now, across the blooming multiverse, echoes ripple. Dozens of timelines, hundreds of child universes, and in each of them, someone remembers, someone builds, someone dares to bend a black hole to their will, not to escape, but to continue. And you're everywhere now. A principle, a pulse, a whisper of continuation humming across space-time. The story doesn't belong to you anymore. You are the story. And it never ends, because now, with every fall, there's a rise. With every collapse, a seed. And in every seed, the echo of a traveler, like you.
You breathe out, though breath is meaningless now. Still, the feeling lingers, a gentle sigh from a body that no longer exists, stretched across the curvature of reality, humming softly as the last echoes fade. The stars dim, not from death, but distance. This universe is new, but already it carries a kind of quiet wisdom. It knows not to rush. It blooms slowly, patiently, like an old soul in a young body. And you rest. You've earned it. You've died 1,000 deaths and witnessed more births than any god could dream. You've been a voyager, a seed, a whisper, a curve in the laws of nature. And now you simply are. No purpose, no plan, just presence. The noise of creation softens to a lullaby. Gravitational waves smoothing into silence. Radiation cooling into velvet black. Time itself stretching like a blanket around you. Nothing presses in. Nothing pulls, only stillness. You watch as one more universe begins to learn itself. It will rise, it will fall, and one day it will ask, where did we come from? And somewhere in the spin of a particle or the hum of a constant, your answer will echo, from a fall. So now, sleep. The stars will be here when you wake. Or maybe they'll be you. Either way, you're home. Sweet dreams.